Hi guys, welcome back. Today is the day. We're going to do the ocean and the sky that I've been promising you. We have another picture from Elena Lazariva, and this one came from her Mermaid book, and that's a grayscale. It's available on her Etsy shop, or you can get the actual Mermaid's book from her Amazon. I will leave the links to her in the description below. When I was going to draw this out, I really wasn't going to put anybody in the foreground or anything in the foreground. So when I found this picture and it had the mermaid in it, I really didn't want to do a mermaid tutorial. This is for the backgrounds and the foreground. And this is going to be the ocean and the sky. I'm going to do it in two videos as to not to confuse anybody. But of course, everybody's going to ask me, how did you do the mermaid? And get out your paper. I will give you the colors. Okay, we got raspberry, mahogany red, a little bit, and a tiny bit of canary yellow, and 70% gray. And that would be the warm gray. Now, somebody once asked me, not too long ago, in fact, why do I put colors underneath that aren't going to show up on top? Well, here we have the perfect example. I have canary yellow underneath the same colors that I have on top of over here, and look at the difference that I have over here. So that is why I put colors underneath, and doesn't mean that I'm going to end up with canary yellow. It just means that I'm going to use that canary yellow to bring out the hues. For her skin, I used a light peach, and then over the light peach and around the edges, I used seashell pink, and then in the middle, I have some white over the light peach. Then I used some gray, and I think this is 50% warm gray. I did it very simply. As I said, this is not a major tutorial on how to do skin colors. The white is over here also, making the highlight. The whole thing is blending into the green of her gills. And the gills I did with dark green, light green, goldenrod, and canary yellow. And that's all. It was very simple. And a little bit of gray in there. I used that 70%. It seems to be like the color of the picture. And then we have the shells. Now, the shells are a little bit more complicated. I actually used the same colors for the hair in the shell, added in some violet and some diazine purple hue over here, added in some white. There is seashell pink and gray. So it's not, we're following the same color scheme. It's just looking a little different depending on how I'm laying it down and how I'm blending it. For this shell, I used the seashell pink, and I mixed it with, or actually not with, but right next to it. And this is the metallic gold pencil. So here is the metallic gold on the outside, but it's covering up gray, so it kind of lost some of its metallic shine, which was okay. And I have the gray, which was the 70%, and white. And that's all I did for that. It's just the way you lay it down. Over here, this squiggly thing, I think it's an octopus. I'm not sure. It was a little bit too small, so I just kind of did it in some gold and goldenrod. There's a little bit of gray in there also. Just keeping everything the same. So while this picture was not hard to do, we're going to go on to doing an ocean. We're going to start this ocean background at the horizon point. And the horizon point you could see is where the sky meets the earth. And that would be right here in the picture. And I'm going to just slightly darken that up for now. Over here and over here. Okay, so that we can keep track of it. And what you're going to do is you want to bring in the waves. But waves in the way distance is going to look like little specks. Specks of light. that keep changing from blue to shimmering from the sun. So what I want to do, okay, is I'm going to make little lines. And this is just for like maybe the first inch on the back. And we're going to fill in all those lines. As I keep going down, the dark is going to become less and less pushed together and one solid block. So I'm going to space it out as it gets closer. Now, I did this very, very lightly when I printed it out so that I can do my own, my own work on it. As I get closer down, I'm going to sort of triangulate the tops to simulate the waves. And just keep going. You could see a little darkness in it, and I'm following that, but I'm also creating my own. Now, as I get closer to her, I'm going to do sort of colors coming down into the water that's going to later on reflect what's going to be in the sky. And I'm going to just keep covering till I get to where the waves are visible, which will be probably down to here. So from here into the back for about an inch, you're going to do them really close together, almost as if they're a solid mass, but leaving some room for other colors. And then I start getting a little bit more sparse. Now, I don't kind of know what this is. I'm going to cover it up. I think it's like a fly or something on the page. I don't know. I'll just make sure something dark goes over it. Now, for the very top where the horizon line is, you don't want it to be completely flat, but it's going to be slightly jagged, just to reflect some of the waves that are in the way distance. In addition to the indigo blue, I also added some light cerulean blue and some 70% gray. This area over here is pretty built up. I want to add a little bit of blender to it. The blender I'm going to be using is called Lavender Spike. It doesn't work as good as mineral spirits, but it's also non-toxic. And it is not the same thing as lavender essential oil. It's a different plant. And I'm just with a brush going in. I'm not smearing the whole thing because I don't want to lose the detail on it. But I'm just making sure that the paper is covered and these waves are not just little hard spikes or hard dashes. This makes a very blended look. This part over here is not 100% necessary. You can do this without it, but it definitely comes out better if you do blend it. And since you have to keep the detail and very small detail, you can't use a blending circular stroke on it. And I'm going to give this about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to dry. And I'm going to do another layer of it. Now, before I go any further inward, I'm going to take my yellow pencil And I'm going to just bring it up into the sky a little bit and around her, because that's kind of where I want the sun's glow to be on her, and I want to reserve the yellows, the open space. Now this is not going to be a sky video, but this is just something I need to do now to establish where my colors are going to go later on. I'm going to start adding some yellow to the water, just shimmering the same way I did it with the blue. And because it's waves, I don't want to make a hard line pattern. And that's just one layer for now. Kind of makes her look like she's glowing. Now remember, as you get further down, the darker blue is going to become more triangular. I know it doesn't look like waves much yet, but it will. We have plenty to add to it. Okay, and in some of these waves, I'm going to make it thicker, and at the peaks, I'm going to just color it in slightly. And that's going to vary. You know, sometimes I will, sometimes I'll keep it thin. The more variety you have, the better it's going to turn out. Just like that. I'm going to keep going. I've switched to cerulean blue, and that color seems to add a lot of richness. And it's the same process. Eventually these colors are going to start to meld together, and that's what you want. Remember, up here it becomes dashes, not triangles. Try to stick with that. And down here it's triangles. Eventually the colors are going to start to meld together, and you're going to sort of start forming a ombre effect from dark to light. Now the predominant color up here is the indigo blue. The predominant color in this area over here is the cerulean blue. And then we're looking at the light aqua being over here. So I know that at one point it's not going to look good, and then all of a sudden, once you start getting these lines intersected and the shading beginning, it'll start to look like an ocean. All that prep work you do on the bottom is what comes together at the top eventually. Now I'm still keeping this area open because I'm going to match it up with sort of like the sky and the sun. So I can't really do this general area until I have the sky. So the way I'm going to do this picture is I'm going to do the water all the way up to here. That will, a little bit of sand over here, and in the next video I'll concentrate just on the sky. Now notice I haven't added any white in yet. I'm going to, but I didn't want to blend out my colors using the white yet. And for me, it's easier to use a Posca or my titanium white from brush and pencil than it is to try to smear in the white wax pencil, because sometimes it just creates a diluted color. I'm not going to have that much space in the distance that there's going to be large white lines, but I'm going to want them bright. You know, once you get like 3 or 4 layers, like nice thick layers on the ocean, you can go in with a little of your blending again and start softening any lines up. Now I'm going to switch over to my aqua because I'm getting closer to the bottom over here. And the good thing is that you can always go over it if you're good with your tooth and you're not too heavy-handed. You can always go over it. It's not, oceans are much easier to do in other mediums. Colored pencil oceans are more difficult. So if you're having problems the first 1 or 2 times that you're doing this, don't feel bad. It took me many attempts to get just one picture looking the way I really wanted it. And then, sort of like any technique, once you do it once, you make perfections in it, and it becomes easier. I'm just going over in between the lines so that everything is blended. Later on, I might use some white down here just to lighten things up a lot. You know, in the occasional spot, I am doing circling when I want, like over here, I want it really blended out. That's why I didn't want grayscale in my background that much, because I'm really not following the grayscale pattern. Just get some of this lighter color in the upper areas. Don't rush it. Remember, colored pencil is the slowest medium out there. You don't see something like this done in a painting that would take as long as pencil. Pencil is way slower. And the aqua looks good on top of the both the cerulean blue and the indigo blue. And then, of course, I also have some light cerulean blue mixed in there, and I also have some periwinkle in there. So these are basically my colors. The occasional cloud white, although it's not, it works a little bit better on top layers than it does on the bottom, because this is a very good blending medium, this pencil. See, the more you work on it, the more it looks like waves instead of just spotty lines on the paper. You can see that texture starting to come out in it. And just darken up a little bit in here because it would appear shadowed, but she's a little bit too far from that wave to actually put a shadow. But because it's so close to an object, there would be a little darker hue. Keep your strokes going very jaggedy and going all in the right direction. All should be going in this direction. There should be nothing going in that direction. And just make sure this stays dark. You can add a tiny bit of black to it, which I'm about to do in a minute, just to get that really good ombre effect. You don't even have to go as dark as black. You can use a 90% cool gray. I'm going to go with what's out on my desk. I do that a lot. I found my black. So you have to be very, very careful that you don't make it too dark. So go very light with it if you go with the black. Getting this nice and dark will make that white pop when we add it later on. And remember, the sky back here is not a smooth line. It should be jagged. This is almost like scribing. Remember vibration that I taught you? But it's going all in one direction. And now I'm going to pick out maybe some darker spots to add a darker hue in. My hand is very, very light when adding black to this. It took me longer to learn this technique to actually have it physically done on the paper. I had a lot of scrap copies that I did before I actually did it. I was nervous about putting it on the actual paper with the finished mermaid on it. I was like, oh, I had made a couple of copies, practice copies, just to make sure my hand was, developing the technique okay. I don't want to put too much. I don't want to darken it up too much. Go back to my light aqua. And you want to make sure also that your color butts up against the objects. Now remember, there's hard and soft lines. This is a hard line right here, but it still needs to be very tight up against whatever is in the background. For a good picture, you want a good sketch. And I think Elena really provided me what I wanted in my mind. She came to me in the right moment. Like it was meant to be. I'm going to stop at this point. I thought I was going to be able to do this in 2 videos. I'm going to have to do this picture in 3 because it's getting really long. This is the point I'm going to stop at. We're going to do the beach in the next video and then the sky in the next. So that'll work out for the whole entire picture. And I will see you in my next video. Take care.